the phone becoming a wedge in relationships. I know this from the science and from all the people that I work with, and I encourage your listeners to really think about this is that most of what they're scrolling is hypersexualized. It's not just doom scrolling nonsense. There's probably, a little bit of a piece of that, but what men are realizing now is that they're on different social media platforms for dopamine hits from lower key sexualized content. And especially as people try to step away from porn, they actually step into that more on accident because their brain needs the high level of dopamine.
Welcome to the Dad Nation podcast, where men go from good to great in their life and love. Now more than ever, our world needs strong, courageous, and compassionate men, because we believe that when the dad gets better, the whole family wins. Now, this movement is called Dad Nation, but ultimately this is for the wives, the children, and the generations to come, because we also believe that every wife and child deserves a father who is pursuing greatness. I am your host, Mitchell Osmond, and I am so grateful and I'm humbled that you've chosen to spend your most precious resource, which is your time, with me today. Listen, today we've got another incredible episode for you, so let's get into it. Well, welcome to the Dad Nation podcast, everyone listening. And today I want to introduce you to Dr. Trish Leigh. Now, she is a world-renowned educator, speaker, consultant, and practitioner who holds professional certification as a top-tier brain health, neurofeedback, and sex addiction recovery coach. These roles have also earned her recognition as a thought leader in the realm of personal transformation through improved brain performance. Now, she is also the author of the book Mind Over Explicit Matter: How to Quit Porn and Improve Intimacy Through Neuroscience. And just so y'all know, as you're listening, I'm just so excited to have her on the show today. If you listen to the show, you know that I'm a bit of a brain geek, and I love understanding how the brain works and neuroscience and how it affects our day-to-day lives. So Dr. Trish, thank you so much for being with us on the show today. Looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, me too. My pleasure. That's a mouthful with the credentials, but I'm on a mission to help people optimize their brain performance so that they can use their mind and bodies in a really purposeful way. So thank you.
Yeah.
I'm psyched to dive in.
Yeah. So a lot of the listeners, are men, right? I would say probably 95% of them are men who are married, have children, and want to improve their life, their marriages, their mindset, fitness and things like that. So we're gonna
Mhm.
have a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, we are.
But I would love to get into some addiction. I would love to get into, some explicit content. I know obviously you wrote the book
Mhm.
on it, so we're gonna have
Mhm.
a lot to talk about there. And maybe,
Mhm.
as if we get time, we can get into some of how we can heal and change and move on. And even if you could take some of your understanding from your neuroscience background and speak to the men and particular challenges we face as men versus, say, women,
Yeah,
and
of
get into a
course.
little bit of that stuff. So, but first of
Yeah,
all,
and just so you know too, the 95% of the people who follow me on YouTube and are part of my community are men. So that is who I talk to. So I'm ready. But of
love it.
course, I can hit the women too for the 3% that are here with us.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I'll ask the question everybody asks, because at the end of the day, everybody wants to know, who are you? Who
Mhm.
are you, and how did
Mhm.
you get here? What's a little
Yeah,
bit,
of
if you
course.
could give us like the
Mhm.
Coles notes, like what got you into this space?
Absolutely. So, I have had a neurofeedback practice, which neurofeedback is a neuromodulation technique, which I would love to dive into a little because people don't understand that there's advanced neuroscience that can help rewire their brains. I was a college professor for a long time. I have 5 kids plus a bonus son. So my husband and I both come from families, Irish Catholic, you know how that goes, 3 boys and 3 girls. We technically have 3 boys and 3 girls. So it's a full life, as we joke, but really cool. I was a college professor for a really long time, and then I opened my own practice with neurofeedback because I had been studying it for so long. I'm like, the world needs this, and somebody needs to provide it to people. So that's kind of how I went from educator to providing a service. But then, of course, what happened was a few years into my practice, without really knowing it, someone that I cared about in my practice, I learned through him, who was made to come see me because of his wife, that he had a porn addiction. And honestly, porn wasn't on my radar at all. I had not thought about it. I hadn't really cared about it either way. But when I understood the devastation that was happening in his life, I couldn't stop. It's just my personality too. I dove into all the science. And a cool thing about my educational history, I have many different college degrees. So it is a multidisciplinary education. I was kind of perfectly poised to be able to apply it to sex addiction. So when this was happening to my friend and his family, he was literally going to lose everything, about to lose his job. His wife was about to divorce him. His relationships with his kids were strained, like, literally everything. Um, he went to work with a therapist and I went to work on figuring it out. And he was still a client of mine, but nothing was working for him. So in one day in this download, I downloaded this program in my mind. And then I started talking about it online and men started listening. And then I'm like, I'm on a mission because I helped him. Long story short, my friend who was not able to get help in that interim when I was becoming even more educated, I was able to help him very quickly back on track.
Wow. That's
Mhm.
powerful.
Yeah, so the necessity of invention, right? Is
Mhm.
necessity is the mother of invention. You do it because you need to, and you're called to do it. And I always joke, sitting in those blue chairs, I was literally thinking to myself, "Am I going into porn? I'm going to start talking about, you know, porn online." And I felt like I needed to. I felt like I had a secret that nobody knew, that it was happening within most people's families. We know that there's a significant increase in divorce and heated breakups. I'm like, this is happening to everybody that I know. And the beauty of it is now I talk to my children about it. I have for a long time, helping them to um, develop healthy emotional regulation and healthy sexuality. It's been such a gift for me, but it was a difficult time during those early years.
Yeah, wow.
Mhm.
Can I just say thank you for your work?
Thanks.
Some of my clients, struggle with this, and
Mhm.
it can get such a foothold in their lives and their marriage, and it's so powerful, and so we need more people like you in this world helping other people, men and women,
Yeah,
find
thank you.
freedom
Mm.
from
Yeah,
this.
absolutely. Absolutely. Like, I'm on a mission. And even though I was originally really uncomfortable talking about it, and sometimes I still am,
Mhm.
uh, it I think it's the greatest impact that I can make. And from on a personal note, like I felt like I was floundering professionally. Everybody who knows me knows this. Like I left the university right after I got a big promotion and tenured. I was basically
Mhm.
guaranteed in this easy and profitable lifestyle. My poor father almost died when I told him I'm quitting. He's like, "What are you talking about?" And, just I always felt like I wasn't home in my work, even though I enjoyed it. And then when this happened, I have never felt more on purpose.
Mm.
There's never been, like, even with the challenges, and there's been many that I've faced in the last decade, pivoting into this, I've never questioned, if I'm in the right place. I've never felt more at home.
Hey, I promise we're going to get back to this episode, but I just wanted to take a few seconds to tell you about a free marriage course that I'm offering, no charge, and it's called Remodel Your Marriage. And it's a 4-step blueprint to understanding your wife, keeping your cool, and getting the fire back in your marriage. And in this course, we're going to dig into the 4 foundations that every successful couple understands well. And that's number 1, how to love each other well. Number 2, how to feel and how to communicate how you feel, how to communicate through conflict. Number 3 is how to fight fair and how to fight well. And then number 4 is how to have fun and to break out of that routine of becoming just really great roommates. And so if you're watching this and maybe you would say that your marriage is feeling a little stale, maybe needs a little remodeling or refreshing, all you need to do is head to dadnationcode.com/remodel for that free course for you, my friend. I put a lot of time and energy into it, and I believe that it can help you transform your marriage. I believe in the marriage model. I believe in you and your marriage, my friend. All right, let's get back to the episode. Yeah, wow, I love that. And yeah, that's evidence that you're doing the right thing. you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
For sure. So
Mhm.
can we get into this a little bit? Because I know we can talk a
Mhm.
lot about a lot of other things like anxiety and blah, blah, blah. But
Mhm.
because of the specific context and your specialty, I would love to talk about, explicit content and how it affects us. And the big
Yeah,
question
we
that I'll,
definitely can carry it over into anxiety and attention because I literally believe it's at the core of those surface issues that everybody is struggling with, especially in social media. So we can definitely go, with depth and with some breadth on it.
love it.
Mhm.
Um, one question I'd love to ask you, and I'd love to hear you give me an answer on it because I know that it's a question I hear all the time.
Mhm.
And now that we get a chance to hear from a professional like you, is porn really just a bad habit? Or is there something far more dangerous that's happening beneath the surface? Because I hear this all the time from men.
Mhm.
It's just a bad habit like
Mhm.
smoking or whatever. I gotta kick it. Nah, it's not really affecting me. Blah blah blah. So is it that, or is there
Mhm.
something going on deeper? And can you unpack that for us?
I can for sure. So, being late is a bad habit. Smoking actually is an addiction. Being late, bad habit. You should really work on that. But smoking and porn use and even hypersexualized social media use, like I just said, that is an addiction. And I don't love the word addiction because it doesn't resonate with a lot of people. They don't know they're addicted. So I do like to use the word compulsion.
Hmm.
And this way, it's like what a compulsion is you feel compelled to go back to it, even if it's creating problems in your relationship, even if your work is breaking down, even if you can feel it in deteriorating focus, increased anxiety that maybe you're not connecting the dots, but it's causing some issues in your life. And then you still feel the need to go back to it. That's what a compulsion is. And we know to very clearly answer the question, there's a lot of science that shows it's highly addictive and that it causes all these mental and physical health issues like decreased focus or what I call porn induced ADHD. Most of my clients have thought that they have adult ADHD. And my answer to that is that's not a thing. ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder. If you didn't have it before the age of 12, it's behaviorally induced from screen use. So
Wow.
we can dive into that. And people have anxiety, and the physical issues are erectile dysfunction or sexual arousal dysfunction, which many men are not admitting to themselves or to other people that they are struggling with SAD, sexual arousal dysfunction, which in its full blown version is erectile dysfunction, but it's also in not being able to enjoy the experience or perform with your partner, but being able to with pornography and masturbation. So, number one, it's classified as addictive. Scientifically, the World Health Organization considers it part of compulsive sexual behavior disorder. So, we know it's that classification. And, it's impacting so many people.
Wow. That is yeah, I love the way you broke that down. And I, as you mentioned that, I see that in so many people's lives myself. Um and working with
Yeah, and
them.
it's easy to figure out too. There's a continuum of use to misuse to abuse, which means like you start using porn, maybe then it's a habit, but it was a habit for most people when they were 10 or 11. Now it's a decade later. If you're still doing that a decade later, then it's transitioned to misuse. You're doing it too much. Abuse. You should be at work, but now you're running late. Then it transitions over into compulsion, where you try to stop, but you can't. That's when it's taken hold. And then when that continues, then it's full blown addiction. And the difference is you need it to not feel bad instead of needing it to feel good. And most people know that distinction that I'm talking about. And there are tests that you can take to see if you qualify as having a porn addiction, but without even checking those boxes, I tell people just try to quit and see what happens. Try to stay away for a week or two. There'll be an increase in anxiety, a decrease in focus, more anger, more irritability. Those are withdrawal symptoms. That means you have a need for it.
Hmm. Wow. We could probably just we could probably just push in and end the conversation there. I mean, usually, if we, you
It
know
was
what,
really not no. It was
I'm
nice spending time. No, I'm kidding.
you could slowly reverse that and listen back to what she was saying because that's so good. Your perspective on it and how it affects us. So what are some of the costs? Because I think there are
Mhm.
guys who are paying a price and they don't even realize the price that they're
Mm,
paying, which is, I think, indicative in
absolutely.
their language and saying, "Nah, it's fine. It's just a bad habit."
Mhm.
So what are some of those maybe hidden costs or slightly under the surface that they would be paying that maybe they're not aware of?
Yeah, absolutely. The list is longer than my arm, but we can hit the big ones is decreased connection and intimacy in the real world. So if you feel disconnected from your partner or your partner's not happy with you, and don't get me wrong, it's in the context of a relationship. I've been married for 23 years. Relationships have their own dynamics, but at the same time, like if explicit matters in the mix, it is a variable. That's what I want people to know. So we know intimacy and connection go down, relationship satisfaction goes down. If you are less attracted to your partner, that's proven by science that you find your partner less physically attractive because of comparing it to, performer ideals. Okay, so focus and productivity, completely proven by science to decrease, especially in men. That's the cognitive piece, the thinking piece. Emotional regulation, something difficult happens. And if you had built the skills across the lifetime to deal with difficult things, it would be a lot easier. But for many men who have a porn habit or compulsion, when things get difficult, the routine now becomes escapism. So it's more numbing and escaping instead of being able to calmly approach difficulties. That can play out as anger and irritability, mood swings. That has to do with if there's a lot of dopamine flowing in your system, because dopamine's produced when you consume pornography or masturbate, usually together. That's a dopamine flood in the system. Now you go back into your life, you're in a dopamine deficit state. So your work is less engaging. It doesn't feed your soul like it used to. A gentleman put on the intake form for my work a couple weeks ago. It was actually very sad that he wanted to feel like a real boy again, like a reference to Pinocchio, just feeling anhedonia, feeling numbed out, depressed. So, it's increase in all mental health issues, which most people they're feeling that. They feel depressed, they feel anxious, but they don't know why. And they think they have ADHD, but then either they don't understand the connection to porn and hypersexualized social media, but going back to your comment, a lot of people say it's fine, it's a habit. I've learned throughout, over the last decade, those are the people who know in their heart that it actually is an issue for them. But if they admit to themselves that it's an issue, it necessitates they work on it. And that is very scary.
Hey, we're going to get back to the episode, but while I have you here, I wanted to ask you, would you consider helping a brother who's struggling in his life right now? Maybe it's a guy searching the internet to help save his marriage, his health, or his family. Maybe it's a man that's just behind you on this journey. And we know, statistically speaking, there are thousands of men doing this, and we know that there are probably men in your social circles that are struggling with some of these very same things. If you'd be willing to help, this is how you can help, and I promise it'll take less than 60 seconds. If you've gotten any value from this podcast so far, would you be willing to give us an honest review and subscribe to our channel, whatever channel you're listening on? If you want to take this to the next level, would you consider sending this link to a friend of yours who you know would benefit from listening to this show? Now, why would you do that? Because the more men that hear this content, the more marriages we can save, the more fathers we can help step up, and the more lives that we can change forever. This isn't just for the men. This is for the wives, the children, and the generations to come. So I want to say thank you so much for doing your part to help other men find the support that they need. Now let's get back to it. Wow. Okay, I'm just going to throw a couple scenarios at you to get your
Sure.
opinion on it.
Mhm.
Another thing I hear from men is, well, I don't really look at porn by myself, but sometimes me and my girlfriend or me and my wife use it to get in the mood. What would you say to that? Is that a crutch? Is that Is that acceptable? Is
Mhm.
it not? From a neurological perspective, is that still the same thing? What are your thoughts?
Mhm. My thoughts are that, first of all, that is happening much less than a secret porn habit. So we can make that distinction in a minute because we'll stay on this thread. But in this context, what you're doing is you're going to an external variable to help you become aroused in what's supposed to be an experience.
Hmm.
So I've likened this to, let's say you go to a French restaurant. If you've ever had a French meal, the portions are teeny tiny, but they're made of the highest quality ingredients. So you get a tiny meal, but it's so delicious. Now you're at the French restaurant, except for you put on the table next to you a huge chocolate cake with blue and red and yellow frosting that is filled with chemicals and has been scientifically proven to make you feel good in the short run because it gives you all the sugar, but it's terrible for you. Huge chocolate cake. Now you're eating this French meal, but first you eat some cake to get it going. Like, it doesn't make any sense in the context of a real world experience. And that would be how it would be for a person with an eating disorder, which I often like a pornography addiction to an eating disorder, not necessarily like gambling or drinking, which a lot of people want to equate those, because eating and sexuality are both evolutionarily healthy behaviors. So when it comes to these behaviors, you have to learn how to do it in a healthy way. But in the case, to sum it up, is you have this healthy experience that could be amazing, but not hit as hard as a chocolate cake, and you're augmenting it with something artificial. The only people who do that are people who have been conditioned to do that. So if those people never found pornography in their adolescence, which is when most people do, and watered those seeds of addiction, it would never be something they would want to do because they would love this French meal so much. I think when you take sexuality out of the conversation and you just look at it for the behaviors of healthy I'm going to call it normal in quotes, but we'll call it optimal, healthy, normal, optimal behaviors, and you contradict it or contrast it or compare it to supernormal behaviors. That's what porn is. It's a supernormal stimulus. But you take the sex part out, it becomes much clearer how there's artificial heightened responses that are not healthy for you, opposed to having your brain just learn to enjoy. It's called the happiness trifecta. When you have a sexual experience with another person, it can be the highest level of pleasure, which is dopamine. It also has serotonin for engagement, joy, love, and it has oxytocin for connection. But now when porn's in the mix, it actually distorts that. That doesn't hit the same. What happens to the brain is it wants very high levels of dopamine at a level 20, where the happiness trifecta is at a level 8 on a
Mm.
healthy scale up to a level 10.
Wow. So it distorts what you yeah, no, wow. That's good. And okay, so what would you say would be the biggest mistake? We'll call it a brain mistake that
Mhm,
keeps men stuck in this
mhm,
because there might be guys listening to the show and they might say, "Yeah, that's me. That's me.
mhm,
You know, I'm there and I'm trying and I don't
Mhm,
know how to get out." Like an
mhm,
eating disorder or anything else.
mhm, mhm.
What do you think is maybe one of the biggest mistakes they make that keep them stuck in that addiction?
sure. And of course, this is my perspective, but it's also very scientifically driven. And this part is challenging for me, just to be honest with you. Okay.
Okay.
Throw it out there. Is that because I want people to know there is advanced technology that can help shift their brain. So the part that's difficult is I don't want to sell people my services or technology. So
Mm,
I always tell people that, well, just to back up for a second, in my book that's published through HarperCollins, is the first time I wrote it, they were trying to edit it out about QEG brain mapping and neurofeedback because they're like, we want people to have a full experience in this book. And I'm like, yes, but the number one thing a person has to understand is brain dysregulation, brain dysfunction is at the core of the problem. So if you immediately address the brain problem and you do it in an unconscious way with technology, it can just shift things for you very quickly. That's the services that I offer. That's why I feel like I don't want to sell people something, but I also want them to know like this is the fastest shift. And then there's one other thing that I don't sell, but I advocate for on my website is there's a brain training headband that people can use at home. It's the same hardware that I use. I have my own app, Dr. Trish Leigh app, where I provide my services. But this piece of hardware, this brain training headband, it's in the $200 range and I use mine all the time, honestly. Um, it's a way people can start training their brain. And I talk about it in the book. So I said to the publishers, it needs to be in the book because, yes, people can get a full experience here, but we can't hold them back from understanding the advances in technology. So I think the number one mistake is people discount the role of brain dysregulation. And just to explain it a little bit more so people do understand, I call it the silent tsunami. So, if you're struggling with addiction or anxiety or those ADHD symptoms, you have relationship breakdown, that's like the tsunami that's up on the shore. That's what you know. That's your behavioral experience, your mind, your body, your relationships. But that came from the crack in the ocean floor miles and miles, miles and miles away. So far away, you don't even know it happened. That's the brain dysregulation. When a person finds porn when they're young, in the first exposure, it changes the way that the brain needs dopamine. That's why early exposure is really a very important variable. There's a scientific study that shows if a person found porn at the age of 10, they use porn with a higher frequency than someone who found it after the age of 11 because of those critical developmental years in the brain. So, not underestimating the role of your brain, because what we try to do in behavioral strategies, we try to use our mind and our body to change our brain, to rewire it. And that does work, but that is much slower. It leads to slips, it leads to relapses. It's the up and down that a person feels. And it can lead to ultimate failure because there's not enough momentum in the beginning stages of recovery. And I think knowing that there's brain sciences and there's technology, that gets the flywheel going for the upward spiral much more quickly. I mean, I know that definitively. In my work, I keep data. It's EEG, electroencephalogram. I can see how a person's brain performs every single day they're in the program with me. I can see the changes over time. So can they. So I know definitively the brain changes. It allows a person to use their mind and body in a more powerful way and they can break free much more quickly.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, exactly. It's just it's like taking the freeway to freedom,
Hmm.
rather
Hmm.
than the side roads, right?
Exactly.
Maybe.
Yes. Yeah, it is. I like that. Hmm.
How would you
Hmm.
differentiate the difference between the mind and the brain? Just out of curiosity.
Sure. I think the brain, or I characterize the brain more as like the supercomputer. And then the mind and body are both a a way that the brain is projected out. If a person doesn't feel in control of their mind, it's because of the brain dysregulation. Like ultimately, it is brain feeds out to mind and body.
Hmm.
And we know this too because the idea is in the mind, it's emotional regulation or self regulation. So if your mind is calm and focused and you're able to stay in peace and on purpose, that is a mind that's regulated, a brain that's regulated, sorry. So a
Hmm.
regulated brain equals self regulation in the mind and body.
Wow. That's an important
And of course
distinction.
it's a two-way street too though. We
Hmm.
can use our mind. So, if you get stressed out and you have the ability to calm yourself down, your brain was getting away from you. It was becoming dysregulated. But you say some affirmations, you go for a walk, you drink water, and you can feel yourself getting calmer. It's a two-way street. We can use our mind to help our brain.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And so I'd love to jump back to what you were saying about how adult ADHD is not a thing,
Mhm,
and you talked about different things that we do as adults, that put us in this position, and then we call it adult ADHD. Can
mhm,
you just sort of unpack that a little bit more? Like, so what are some things that might cause us to feel that way, like think we have adult ADHD, and what might be like symptoms? So if anyone's listening
Mhm.
thinking, do I have what she's talking about? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. I love this. This is a great question. So, if you feel like you're struggling with adult ADHD, it is likely because your brain performance has actually changed. So, as brains develop until they're 28. So, this is why screens are so important, especially explicit matter and even social media. That proven scientifically is that when your brain is developing, it becomes stunted in its development. It stops developing and it remains performing too slow. That's what it's called, hypofrontality. Your frontal lobe doesn't fully develop and it doesn't work at the optimal speeds for calm focus. Then, if we engage in behaviors that keep slowing it down, which is exactly what porn and dopamine seeking and searching behaviors like social media do, now you hit a tipping point and you can't focus and you're highly distractible and you're back to your phone when you should be working. Those behavioral symptoms are because your brain changed. It shows up on the brain mapping that I do. So people would qualify for ADHD, but my point is, you didn't have it as a child because ADHD is what's called a neurodevelopmental disorder. People are born with it when it happens in a true organic sense. But now we have a culture of people who are struggling with an ADHD brain, but it's brought on by their behaviors.
Hmm.
So you stop the behavior, your brain actually comes back to the optimal functioning, and that's what I call unwiring. Like, you stop watching porn, your brain will unwire. You'll well, first it'll probably feel worse, withdrawal, but then it'll start to feel better, but it doesn't always fully rewire. And when I work with people, I can fully rewire it. But here's the distinction for anybody who's listening is that organic ADHD, you have to have the symptoms that you're struggling with as an adult. You have to have had them before the age of 12. And when I work with people, I always qualify that with the age before you started watching porn, because that could be at the age of 10. And most of the people I work with, they're like, no, I didn't have those symptoms,
Hmm.
which means it's not true ADHD. It's behaviorally induced.
Hmm. Yeah. So yeah, and I love that you mentioned social media and scrolling and things because that's also a I think equally important thing to be discussing. I because I work with exclusively men. I actually hear from a lot of women and saying,
Mm.
"Man, my husband's smartphone is this wedge between us, and all he cares about is his phone and scrolling, and you know, and it robs and it robs us of the present moment, the
Mhm.
beautiful passing moments, and
Mhm.
um." And so I guess whether it's someone who's struggling with porn or maybe somebody who's struggling with an addiction to scrolling, doom scrolling,
Mhm.
whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
What I'm
Mhm.
hearing you say is it's reversible. Is that correct?
Mhm. 100%.
And how long does that take? And how would somebody go about doing those steps, taking those steps?
Sure. It's not always about time. Of course, everybody wants to know how long. It's about what you do. You know what I mean? If you just stop scrolling right now and you don't do anything else, it probably would never actually happen. But if you walk away from the phone or you learn to balance your screen time, because when it comes to screens, ultimately they're such a great tool for us to use, right? Like, like, it can open the world for us in terms of our purpose and what we're here and to do and our passions, but it has to be balanced. So figuring that out is the number one thing, and I encourage people to go through a digital detox. It's a digital dopamine detox, stepping away from screen based, too high level of dopamine overstimulation. And then at the same time, dopamine stack in their real life. So figure out all the things that you love to do and do a lot of them in those early days, because that then resets the pleasure pathways in a person's brain and in their life. So you no longer go to the screen at the end of a long day to feel good and to take the edge off. Instead, you go for a walk or you go play frisbee with your buddies, or you meet your friends for dinner, those are real world dopamine activities. But again, they don't hit as hard as very high level stimulation from the screen and especially explicit matter. And just to go back to your comment on the phone becoming a wedge in relationships, I know this from the science and from all the people that I work with, and I encourage your listeners to really think about this is that most of what they're scrolling is hypersexualized. It's not just doom scrolling nonsense. There's probably, a little bit of a piece of that, but what men are realizing now is that they're on different social media platforms for dopamine hits from lower key sexualized content. And especially as people try to step away from porn, they actually step into that more on accident because their brain needs the high level of dopamine. My clients tell me all the time they're sitting on the couch opposite their partner, their wife, either consuming actual porn or scrolling images whilst sitting next to their partner because
Mm.
their brain needs it.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, I'll just give people, the advice is just reset their browser settings or reset their search history. On for example, the explore page on Instagram is
Hmm.
a minefield,
Uh-huh.
you know, and you
Hmm.
can reset the settings so it just goes back to,
Hmm.
whatever. And when it starts to sort of prime you for what you're interested in, but of course
Hmm.
that's a band-aid. But
Hmm.
but it is something that, like, man, it's like the moment you click on one image,
Hmm.
it's like you're planting a seed, and before you know
It
it,
is.
it's a
Oh, the
forest.
the technology is so advanced. And I give an example of my son Seamus. He I think it was really cool. I had this trailer made for my book. It's kind of like a movie trailer type of thing for the book. And I'm like, Shay, I put the trailer out on TikTok. Watch it. And he's like, "No way, man." Because if I click on your trailer, he's like, I have my feed curated, but he has it curated in a really healthy way. He's like, "There's no way I'm clicking on your trailer because the stuff that will show up that I will have to deal with." I loved that response from him. Like, he took a lot of time and effort to make sure there's no junk in his feed. And I tell people the same thing. Clean up your feeds and then step out for 30 days. Let the cleanness like re-hit without you using it and your brain not need the dopamine hits because the brain will recalibrate in those 30 days. It won't need it. It won't even want to go back to the high level of dopamine, especially if a person undergoes the greater context of the work that's involved. And we can talk about that. But then when you go back in, be really selective on what you even gaze on. Eye gaze technology is being used. You linger on something for a little longer than you're looking at other things, you get served more of that, and that's where body parts come into, play. And my brother read my book. It was really cute. I had a party at my house, a book launch party, and most of my family came. My brother didn't come. He called me the night that the book came out. He had listened to the whole thing, which I'm like, first of all, my older brother listening to an entire book on porn and masturbation is in and of itself such a blessing that he chose to do that. But then he texted me. He's like, "Does this explain why the girls on Instagram are?" He goes, "I don't get why they put out the things they put out." And I'm like, they're putting it out for the external validation. They're learning to self objectify for the likes and the hearts and the followers. And they've learned that sex sells. It's always sold, but the every person didn't have the platform to sell it. And now they do. And that makes men the consumers of the consumed, which are young women.
Wow. Men are the consumers of the consumed, which are the young women.
Hmm.
Man, I wanna get that on a plaque somewhere.
Yeah, I know. I'm working on my next book, which is it was supposed to be, we'll see what it ends up being, but it was supposed to be on screen addictions in general.
Mhm.
But as I started to dive into the science, I have anchored into this thought and I have many real world examples, especially a couple really powerful ones of how social media and this back and forth between men and women is changing everything. Like we know there's a strong increase in narcissism in men. Talk about a real world example that men might not be aware they're struggling with, main character syndrome as some people are calling it. But if you consume porn a lot and then now you're on social media, it gives you this sense of like, these things are all here for my pleasure. Narcissism's going is going up in men which an increase in cyberbullying. I was just looking into some of the research. I filmed a documentary on women and how porn impacts women. I was kind of anchoring into some of these ideas. 76% of young women are sent unsolicited genital pictures from men.
Wow.
76% of young women.
Wow.
And 70% are asked to send nudes.
Hmm.
Consumer consumed, like, this dynamic of consumer consumed is it's popping out of all of this research that I'm diving into. So the screen addiction book is very much going to become about this dynamic between men and women and how the interactions digitally are changing everything in the real world for people. More about
Wow.
relationships, which that was a really interesting takeaway for me. I wasn't totally expecting that. I was kind of thinking I'd catalog all the different types of screen use and show the implications, but now I'm really anchoring into how relationships are really being messed with because of this dynamic online.
Did you know that over 70% of divorces in the United States are initiated by women? And in situations where the wife is the higher earner, that statistic goes to 90%. That means that 9 out of the 10 marriages that end in divorce have been initiated by the women in the relationship. What does that tell us? It tells us that we've got work to do. So I want to ask you today, have you been struggling in your marriage? Maybe you've been winning in the boardroom, but you've been losing in the bedroom. In your career, everything just seems to make sense, but when you get home, you can't quite seem to put the puzzle pieces together. Or maybe since becoming a dad, you've gained a bunch of weight, maybe 10, 15, 30, even 100 pounds. You see, all of this leads to frustration, insecurity, and just an eroded sense of self-confidence. Because deep down, you know you were built for more passionate marriage, a strong mind, and a powerful body. But you see, the uncomfortable truth is this: the way that you are living today will become the way that your son lives when he becomes a man. The qualities you exhibit in your marriage today will become the qualities that your daughter will look for in a man someday, either good or bad. Now, I help men win their wives back, lose weight, and develop unshakable self-confidence. And I do this by coaching them one-to-one for 16 weeks of intensive coaching. Now, this program is for men who have seen success professionally but are struggling personally. So if you're listening to this and you are a married man who's under 50, who's earning 6 figures, and has struggled with any of the things I've just talked about, then I want you to pause this episode and I want you to hit the link in the show notes below and book a complimentary session with me where I'm going to show you exactly what to do in order to get your life back on track. If there's a fire growing in your gut as you're listening to this, I want you to listen to your instincts, brother. Don't become another statistic. All right, let's get back to the show. Yeah, and I would validate that. I would
Mm.
say 90% of my clients, that's a
Mhm.
that's a problem. The phone
Yeah.
as
The phone.
adults,
Hmm.
right? Whether it's porn, whether it's social media,
Hmm.
whatever it is, whether it's work,
Yeah.
it is
Hmm.
phone. It all is.
Hmm.
It's always the phone.
Hmm. Yeah, and in terms of parenting, I was reading the research in parenting. They call it distracted parenting when the parent's just on the phone all the time. And now we've got kids that are on their phones more because parents aren't being intentional. They're more checked out on their phone. This is the first time in history where the younger generation is worse off in physical and mental health than the older generation ever. First
Wow.
time ever where the younger generation isn't thriving at higher levels than their predecessors. That speaks to the dangers of phones.
Wow. Have you met a guy named Cynthia Sam by chance?
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah. Okay. I had him
I
on the
I
show.
I adore him. I think he's, such a good soul and so sharp. Yes, I like him.
Yeah. I
Huge.
had him on the show a few months back, and we talked a lot of what we're talking about today. So
Mhm,
I was wondering if you
mhm,
guys had been connected, because if not, I was like, man, y'all need to
mhm,
meet each other because
uh-huh.
you'd have a lot to talk about. Um,
Yeah, yeah, we do. We've recorded podcasts twice, I think, and,
cool,
we have a nice, working relationship.
great.
Mhm,
We kind of got into social media and cell phone usage, which I think is great. But a lot of my followers, a lot of my listeners are younger dads. I will say like 25 to 40 ish, have kids,
mhm, mhm,
or preteens, or asking about phones and all that kind of stuff.
mm, mm,
What's your perspective on, how and when to introduce smartphones
mhm.
to your children? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I have a lot of
I
thoughts,
bet you
as you
do.
can imagine. And especially as a mom of 5 kids, and I was just with my son earlier today, who's now 21, and when I first started doing the research on what they call digital natives, that's what they call this first group of kids who had phones. I didn't have a phone growing up, but my son did. He's a digital native. When I first told him about this research, he did not like that term. But then just this morning, he's like, "Oh, yeah, of course it's like that. I'm a digital native," just crack me up. But here's the idea is that I have a lot of ideas, and they're mostly based on science, but also anecdotally as a mom. The things that I wish I would have known earlier with my digital native kids, and then what I'm seeing some of my friends do with their younger kids that I think work and things that don't work. First of all, the phone is a tool. And it really is like we've already talked about, it's the main mechanism of connection for young people today. Like their world is a digital world. So a couple of my friends did not get their kids a phone, and their kids are basically social pariahs. So take caution if you choose not to get your kid a phone until very late, because I get the merit of that on paper. That seems like a great idea because you don't have to deal with it at all. But now you've put your child in a position where they go to school, they get to see people who are all connected digitally outside of school. It can create social issues because I know some of my friends are now like, I wish I would have got him a phone, just helped him to use it better. You know what I mean? For my kids, an interesting thing happens because they get addicted early. The number one thing I would tell parents to do is to get a charging station that is in a public place in their home, like down in the laundry room or in the entryway or the kitchen, a charging station, and establish as early as possible when you get the phones for your kids that the phone goes there every single night at 7 p.m. or whatever time you choose. The phone goes in the charging station. Be aware that your child will definitely put the phone case and the charger plugged into it and will come back and steal that phone. So be aware that you need to make sure the phones are actually there. That's the most powerful thing that you can do so that you teach your child how to use it well. And we can dive into that a little bit more too. Use it well throughout the day, but then not have it at up in their private spaces in their bedroom when they're supposed to be sleeping, and that way it doesn't become a risk for accessing explicit matter or just doom scrolling all night. um, that is the number one most powerful thing that a person can do in the day. What I always did, and it's so cool when you see these things catch and help your child. I always made the kids basically, we had a routine throughout the day, especially when they were little. You had to engage in your life. And of course, I would set that up for them when they were young. Then they could take a break and go on their screen. Chill time, I called it. They could go on their screen at chill time, but then we would have lunch and then we're back into life. Then they could have chill time again on their phone. And I always had the rule that whatever amount of time you use your phone, you had to do double in real life. So most of my kids settled into that balance really easily, except for my one son, Seamus. And he would just overextend the screen time. And I'd be like, Shay, you were supposed to be off 30 minutes ago. So I started making him go outside and play basketball. Because basically, the more you're on a screen, the kids are going to tell you, I don't know what to do. Nothing's fun. That's boring, because they just want to go back to the screen. But a really nice thing happened that even to this day, I will hear Seamus out there just dribbling because now he regulates himself on the screen. He'll go out to basketball. He's 18 years old now. My husband will think he's in his room gaming, and my husband will get up and like go to yell at him to get off, and he's not even there. He's out playing pickleball with his friends. Like he's learned to regulate it himself. But you have to teach them that. That was about 7 years of me helping him on, off, on, off, on, off.
Hmm. Well, there's a book called Essentialism, and I can't remember the name of the author now, but you can look it up. It's just got the red and white and black book. Anyways, he talks
I
about.
read that book. I read that book.
Oh yeah,
With
probably.
like a red line.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Scribbly.
I
Yeah.
read it. I
Well, he
can't
talks
remember.
about how raising his kids, he would give them like he had tokens, coins, and for in order to earn coins, you'd have to do chores and things around the house, and then the only way you could redeem those coins for screen time. And so
Mhm,
each coin was like 30 minutes of screen time.
mhm,
So if you wanted to
mhm,
earn more screen time, you had to go out and
mhm.
play or read. I think
Yep.
it was like read 20 pages of a book
Mhm,
or do the dishes
mhm,
or you name. And so it was just helping kids understand this concept of currency and how to
Mhm.
manage and regulate. And I just thought that was so cool.
I love that. Yeah, we had a chart for the longest time. We had a chart on the refrigerator, and I taught the kids what it meant like to have their business in order. And then as they learned all of that, that's exactly what it was. You had to clean your room, you had to brush your teeth, you had to help clean up the kitchen, those types of things. You had to go outside and be with your friends. You had to balance all the things we're talking about. And they would put check marks on their name on our refrigerator, and then they would be able to earn their screen time. And I always encourage parents to have, and this is behavior management or behavior modification types of strategies, but I encourage parents to, if you have to earn your privileges. A phone is a privilege. And I've always framed this as such for my kids. So they understand it. Your phone's a privilege and you get it by keeping your business in order.
Mm.
So they learn to keep their business in order, and that's how they keep their phone. And the way that I would do it is, if your business is in order on Monday, you get your phone on Tuesday. Very it's I don't take it away in the moment. So it's not impulsive on anybody's, and it's not like, oh, you're not doing your business. It's like, okay, their business is in order, you get that privilege for the next day. And if it wasn't, then they wouldn't be able to use their phone for the next day. And then it's
Oh,
a reset. You get your business done on Tuesday, you get a reset for Wednesday.
I
And
love
it's
that.
more about teaching instead of like, it's you wanna teach them how to regulate and not punish their children, they're learning. You want them to have natural consequences without it being a punishment. And it
Yeah.
works so well, but they'll try to wear you down, especially if you have 5 of them. So it's
Yeah.
the consistency and showing up lovingly and in a teaching manner, and doing it that way was always really powerful because I wasn't mad at them. I was just like, it's evening and Shay, you were on your screen for 2 hours. I'd never let them get that long, but
Yeah.
you were on too long, so you don't get your phone tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
And
Thank you. For,
it has to be individualized. I have 5 different kids that have 5 different screen behaviors. My strategy did not work the same for each one of them. I had to
good.
modify it for each and every one of them based on what the difficult thing was for them.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Great advice. Um, Gosh, this is such a great conversation, Dr. Lee. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem.
I
I'm
do
glad to
have
be
to
here.
wrap it up, but I would love for you to tell us, and my listeners, how we can support you, where we can find you,
Mhm.
and how to help spread this message,
Yeah.
even further.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a YouTube channel, Dr. Trish Leigh. I make a lot of videos to support stepping away from explicit matter and hypersexualized content. So if you need help there, that's a great place for you. Over at drtrishleigh.com is where I support people in my programs. And like I already told you, if you aren't in a position for a program, then you can get that brain training headband there. Links through the manufacturer. It's a beautiful start to start neurologically regulating. The programs that I offer include a neuromodulation piece, but I also have very large digital programs so that you can walk yourself through all the areas. Like I was saying to you, this is a deep issue, so there needs to be a comprehensive approach. And you know how, with the question, how long does it take, the program that I have is 94 days long. If you do all 94 of the strategies 94 days later, your life's in a completely different place, because porn and screen time is the symptom. Emotional and mood regulation, because of your life's foundation being off slightly or a lot, that's the actual problem. So that's what we address in the program. So if you're looking for a program for help, you can go to drtrishleigh.com. And I also have a nonprofit that I founded. It's at pornbrainprevention.org. I create educational programs for parents and kids. So that's a way you can support in terms of a donation. And that's at pornbrainprevention.org.
Amazing. Well, I'm going to have all the links in the show notes below. I want to make sure that anyone listening has every avenue at their disposal to get a hold of you and be
Yeah.
helped, whether it's through your programs, your coaching, or
Yeah,
through
and
the
and the book. We can't forget the book, which I forget all the time. The book is a really great resource for people too, and it's anywhere you buy books. Mhm,
mind over explicit matter.
mhm, mhm.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Thank you
thank you so
so.
much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being on the show. There was so much more that we could have gotten into, so I feel like we're gonna have to do like a part two sometime down the road.
Definitely,
Um,
anytime, because honestly, this is this is my mission. Like, it became my work because it's my mission. So, anytime I can help you out and help people in your community, I'm down
Um,
for it.
Amazing. So, thank you
Yeah,
so much for being on the show, Dr. Leigh. I really
of
appreciate your
course.
time.
No problem. My pleasure. Glad to be here.
Wow, what an incredible episode. Listen, if you are watching on YouTube today, I want to hear from you, okay? Leave it in the comments below. What was the big takeaway for you? What was that big aha moment? And let's start the conversation. If you've listened to this episode and you've decided that you want help today, if you need coaching, if you need some resources, feel free to please reach out to me. My email is mitchell@dadnationco.com. My website is dadnationco.com. You can hit me up on Instagram @dadnationco. And I've got a ton of resources for you. I'm here to help you, support you in any way I can, and to serve you in a powerful way. So check those links. I'll have them posted below. But other than that, listen, I'm here for you. I'm in your corner. Have an incredible week. We'll catch up soon.